Hey guys, I'm back with another part to this tutorial for graffiti, and what we're doing on this project is I have a special request for a music video that a client wants to put out, and we'll be collaborating on the visuals, which is our portion is the fashion design aspect of it, and the gentleman that is putting together the video, Full Out Cortland, if you would like to follow him on Instagram, he does amazing work. He wants to do a Missy inspired look. So we were lucky enough to find this graffiti image here that we can use for inspiration just to get the style together, and then we'll do the original colors from the image, and finally I will change the colors to match the hair that the girls will be wearing in the video shoot. So I originally did the airbrush technique post so that you all could see from start to finish how to do it, and this is a real life project that I'm doing live. Pretty much no practice in this one, so you'll get to see what it looks like in real time. What I did do for this one, because last video I was kind of stuttering over my font, so I did kind of go with my font choices ahead of time. And not that I'm trying to do this exactly, I'm just trying to get the same gist and vibe here. So I have Philly Sans selected for my Missy, and for the misdemeanor I have a font called Flashlight. And we're going to go ahead and get this started. I'm going to start with a new file that's going to be 13 by 19 at 150 pixels per inch. Go ahead and create that. And then what I'm going to do is just pull these elements over into the new artboard. And of course, because it was a smaller file, it's going to look smaller. So I'm going to hit Control T and enlarge that. Hit enter to go ahead and set that up. And as you can see, when I just enlarged that, it also affected my stroke. The stroke looked a lot thicker on the other page, and that's because the pixels per inch are a lot different. So whenever you decide to merge artwork and you want your effects to stay the same, a tip that I have for you is to take that object or those objects and make them smart objects, so that when you bring them over they maintain, and that's just a quick way to do it, it maintains the original look without affecting it when you change the size. But I just put the black stroke around there just to be able to see it on the busy background, so I'm not too concerned about that. I'm going to leave them as standard objects until we get ready to turn them into smart objects like we did in the last tutorial. So right now I'm going to focus on the Missy, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see how my effects are working out. The first thing that I'm going to do, since I know this is the font that I'm going to be using, I'm going to go ahead and clear my layer style. And I'm going to, let me see what this looks like. First of all, it's all caps, it's all caps. Let me show you the difference when, well, this font doesn't have a difference in all caps. And neither does the misdemeanor. But there's an option if you don't want to retype all your text in capital letters. There's an option on Photoshop where you can just make them all caps, and that's what I frequently use if I want to see what a font looks like in all caps rather than retyping it. But looks like Missy is in all caps, ready to go. So I'm going to right click and turn it into convert to a smart object. And the reason why I'm doing this again is because when I make a change to one layer, I want the changes as far as the text or the image that I place in that layer, I want it to propagate to whatever subsequent layers that I created based on this smart object. So for this one, I'm going to assume that I'm doing, I probably could get this done maybe even in one layer. So let's see. first, let's do a gradient overlay. And we're going to pick our gradient based on the image colors. And the image color is not as bright or vibrant as I might want it to be, but that's okay because we can change all that later. So let's go to our color, use our color picker to choose that orange. So I think that orange is a little bit more bright. Yeah, let me do this first. Since I want to have a good color palette, I'm going to adjust not this layer. I'm going to adjust this layer. So I'm going to go to layer, new adjustment layer, and let's do vibrance. And I'll use the previous layer to make a clipping mask. That means that whatever I do to this layer is not going to affect the layers below. And this is just me cheating right now, trying to get some more vibrant colors as part of my color palette. The colors are really intense on Missy's face and skin. However, we're not actually using her image. We're using the graffiti in the background there. So I'm happy with that, just at least for selecting my colors. So I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm going to go back to my gradient overlay effect. So my first color, I'm going to choose this orange. And the second color, I'm going to choose this fuchsia color. And then I want it to meet up about in the same place that it does. And you'll see how the original image doesn't have a slight fade off. It has more of a abrupt cutoff of the color. And you achieve that by bringing these color stops closer together. However, I do want a little bit of gradient between there. There we go. Okay. And then my next guess is I'll probably do an inner shadow. And I'm not going to do the shadow dark. I'm actually going to do the shadow white. So I'm going to change the color from the black to white. And I'm going to turn the opacity up to 100%. And instead of multiply on the blend mode, I'm going to choose normal because I want it to show up as like a clean white. And I'm going to increase my size, my choke, in the distance because I want to see how that looks. Now, before I had a stroke on this just to kind of see it pop from the background. I'm going to do that again. I'm not going to worry about how thick my black stroke is right now. I'm just looking at it to pop off this background. Now it looks like this white is offset a little bit. So let me go back to my inner shadow. And let's play with that to get more of the effect that we want. And like I showed you before, you can actually pull the shadow how you want it. Now that's the general direction I want it to go. But I want it to be sharper. There we go. Now we're getting a little sharpness to it. So we play with the combination of the choke and the size, and I'm getting my sharpness now. And then the distance, if you wanted to pull away from the edge a little further, you can modify that. I think that's fine for this purpose as far as the inner shadow. And then it also looks like we have a drop shadow. So let me take the stroke and make it thinner now so we can see what our drop shadow is really doing. And as a matter of fact, we can make the stroke just the right thickness that we see on the image above, because as I explained before, if you do a drop shadow, you're still going to need the outline because the drop shadow is not going to cover the entire perimeter of your letters. So I'm going to say that's about it. And the other thing is you can change the position of your stroke. The stroke can start from the inside, the stroke can start from the center, or it can start from the outside and then go out. I choose the outside when I want my font to look bolder. Alright, so let's move on to the drop shadow. And I think this is our settings from last time, and we can play around with it because now our shadow is coming from a little bit different direction. Oh, that's what's going on. We're going to take off the use the global light. And the reason why is because on this graffiti image, where the highlight is going is also where the shadow is, and that's not using the same global light source. So we're just going to unlink those. But that's a good thing, because if you were worried about your shadows and everything using the same source, that's usually automatically selected to use the global light. And also we're using our inner shadow more as a highlight, so I think it still works. And we'll go back and reposition that to match the image. So we're going down and to the left to match up the shadow, and then we can change the distance so that it's not so far away. We can also increase the spread in the size to get the desired effect. And I might go a step further and do a bevel emboss because I like to add that little glossy look to it. But for this one, I think I'm going to soften it up. I'm going to change the opacity just a little bit. Bring it down. And we also said, excuse me, that we were going to change this inner shadow back, and we're going to uncheck the use global light, and we're going to manually move it again. So we had our white coming from the bottom and to the left. I'm going to say that's it. And so far, I think that pretty much matches what we want there. Say OK. And for right now, if I wanted to make it look like we had an outer glow and all the other steps that we did before, I could actually take my old file that we did here, and what I'm going to do is take this whole layer right here, just a text layer, not the stars. We'll drag it over. And if I wanted to continue that glow effect, I would click on my Missy, right click, duplicate the layers, which is up here. And I don't know why they put duplicate layer and delete layer right next to one another, but it's definitely a pitfall. Alright, so we're going to name this one Missy Middle Glow. And we'll create one more. We'll duplicate that layer, and we'll call this one Missy outer glow. Say OK. And of course you want the outer glow to be at the bottom, the original Missy at the top, and then you have your middle glow. So now all I have to do is literally right click on the middle glow option, right click, I can copy that layer style, and I'm going to paste that layer style. Now if you went through the first part of the tutorial, you already have this set up as a template. You have literally created your own template. But again, if you need assistance or you want the template already done, just let me know and I will make it available on the website, innatelab.com. INNATELAB.com. So now all we need to do is paste that layer style. And technically, that's the same look. So I can delete that. I'm a stickler now too for getting rid of stuff on my artboard that I just don't need, because these layers can get real intense and you want to be able to find stuff when you're ready to move. Alright, so if I was wanting to keep that look, which I might, the good thing is you can just make things invisible if you don't know if you're going to use them yet. But just staying true to this look for right now, and I'll probably play with mine later when I'm doing for the wardrobe. I'm just using this one for the font, color, and styling choice there. And so you can see my bubbles are there. Oh, bubbles came over because they were linked. So I'm going to unlink them so that I can delete bubbles, or if you want to see what bubbles looks like over the graphic, like to see it, here it goes. And I'm just doing my Control T and placing those. And the bubbles are a little bit different because they are exactly round. Sometimes they don't look right when you transform them in odd ways, like basically squish them and don't do it proportionally. So your highlight stars, you can get away with that. But I probably will do some stars for hers, but I'm going to do her some fresh stars if I do them, because this one is a big deal and I want to make sure my stars are in the right place. So I'm even going to delete my highlight and my color stars. And now we're going to work on the misdemeanor. So I got the Missy. Let's pull misdemeanor. Where are you? Here you go. Control T is going to allow me to transform it so I can make it a little bit larger. And again, it is not the same font. Now let me see if this font even has, some of these fonts are free and they don't, you know what I'm talking about, they won't have things like commas and certain numbers and that sort of thing. So you end up in this odd position where you love a font and you pretty much have to end up buying it if you love it that much. And this is just for personal use, so we're not actually selling this design. But otherwise, you would need to go get your commercial license for that font and all that good stuff. Alright, and I would probably venture to even move these quotations because I feel like they're a little too high up. And if I wanted to do that, there is a way to do this. Now, when I do it, it would make this, you know what, let's do it. Let's go ahead and clear this layer style. And I'm going to make it a smart object. And I'm going to show you how you can have font and images as in your smart layer. So let's right click, and I'm going to convert this to a smart object so that when I double click on it, I'm opening it up and it's editing it on its own. So right now I'm going to duplicate this misdemeanor layer. And the reason why is because I want just those quotations so I can move them around as I want. And let's do left rotation or left quotations. And then I'm gonna Alt move that one over so it made an exact replica of it, and I hold down the Shift key so that it moves it exactly to the left or right and doesn't and keeps it on that same track. And I'm gonna do my right. See if left and right is different. Left, right. Looks like left and right are the same. So in this case, I'll just take one of these. Now, I want my misdemeanor to remain editable, so I'm just going to delete the quotes off the end and keep the misdemeanor text. And once I start moving this around, you'll see these little pink guidelines, and that's snapping it to the middle of the artboard there. So for my quotation, I could keep this editable, or let's say this was a shape that I needed. I can right click and I can convert that to a shape. And then I can Control T, transform it. Now it's a shape, and I will need to hold down the Shift key in order to keep it with the same ratio. And then if I wanted to, I'm going to hold down the Shift key so it pulls it over exactly level. You see what I'm talking about here? How it's not going up and down, it's only going to the left and right. Because if I wanted to, Control T, that puts me in transform mode. I'm going to right click and I'm going to tell it to flip horizontal. And honestly, that really didn't do anything for me. Yeah. I think it's just meant to have that same directional look to it. Otherwise, I would have to flip each one and kind of play with it a little bit, and I don't think that's worth it. Alright, so now we have our misdemeanor editable text and our shapes as quotes. If we hit this X here to exit out, it's going to ask us if we want to save. Make sure that you say yes. Now with updates and our quotations are a little closer to the font like I would like it to be. Now there are some differences in this font, and then we also have these drips that come off the font. So what I would like to do is edit this to include the drips. So let's double click on the misdemeanor, and my artboard isn't long enough to give me any space for the drips. So if I go to image and canvas size, I can lock everything up to the top and give myself some extra height here. And let's just say I'm gonna give myself 5 inches. And now I just have some room to create drips here. The other thing that I'm gonna do is go ahead and I'm gonna create a group, only because it is really hard to see this green, and I want to create a color overlay of normal blend mode and black so that I get the highest contrast and I can see what my drips look like. I'll go ahead and close this one out because we don't need that anymore. Alright, I'm going to take my image here and bring it over to my smart object, only because I want to get an idea where the drips fall. And I can pull that below my group, and I'll pull my misdemeanor text below it. And then with this group, I have a color overlay. I'm also going to go ahead and put a white stroke around it just so it pops off my background. We choose a white. Oh, actually I chose a white overlay, which is actually better. So let's use this white overlay and let's just play with these drips. Now, right now, I have the stroke and overlay over this entire group, which means if I put anything inside of this group, it's going to also collectively have the stroke and overlay rather than each element having a stroke and overlay, which looks quite a bit different. So let's see if I have some drip brushes. Now we have the bling brushes. Let's go to the drips. And I think, let's go with this one. And of course, we're going to need to create a new layer because you don't want to do this on one of your existing layers. We can right click and increase the size of the drip. That's too large. You can manually type in numbers here. Sometimes the slider does not do you justice. That's my color monkey trying to do a color calibration here. Alright, so let's see what this one does. And of course, our text here is quite a bit bigger. Okay, now it did a drip, but if you notice, I think it also put something up there. Let's try that again. Yeah, that drip was kind of long. And what I can do with this drip is I can control T, and I can just use the same drip over and over again if I like. And like I said, the effects that we're seeing right now are applied to the entire layer or the entire group. So that's why you don't see the outline continue to go all the way around this particular shape. It's applied to the group. Now you could also choose a font that already had drips on it if this makes you a little nervous. And I can hit the shift key if I want to disproportionately change the size of everything. And I just want it to look like it is seamlessly coming out of the letters. Now I've created two already. I'm not in the habit of doing things over and over and over again, so I'm going to select these two drips that I selected, and I just selected one, held down the control key, select the other, and you have to click on it where the words are for the layer. Let me show you what happens when you hit control and you select the picture. You're actually going to get the marching ants, and you're selecting that portion of the image. That's not what you want. If that happens, just go to select and deselect, or you can hit Control D. But I am hitting control while I'm touching the name of the layers. So now I move that as a, and it's not a group, but I'm just moving it all together right now. Multiple layers selected. So I'm going to hit Alt or hold down Alt, and then I'm going to move these two together. And I also see, I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. These dots, I knew I wasn't crazy. These little dots are coming from that paint. And what it really is a tiny bit of white, but you can't even see that white, but it's creating that that color, well, that stroke from the group. So we do want to clean that up. And how we'll do that is we'll make the text disappear, and we'll clean all that up. All right, so, and you don't want to just continually have long, short, long, short, long, short. So you want to switch it up. And for this one, I might do Control T, right click, and flip horizontal. So now I have a short, long. And then I can change the size of it a little bit since this R is a little thinner. Let's zoom in. I'm going to hit enter to lock that in. I'm going to right click, and now I can see the names of what I'm trying to select. And this R is really thin, so you can get yourself in trouble trying to make it match up. Now this is literally a brush, so I could come here and I can take any of my selection tools. Let's say I'm going to use I'm going to hold down this last option here and it'll give me all of my tools. So I'm going to use a polygon lasso just to kind of clean that up. Those little dots there, probably going to get right about here and clean those up. Go ahead and hit delete, clean that layer up, and it's only going to delete that layer that you're actively on. So I could even go back to here and just kind of clean up this excess here. I don't know which one is on that layer, which one's on this layer, but it cleaned that up. So let me go to select, deselect, so I can back up, see what's going on. And it looks like this one that's on the R, 1 and 2, I'm going to select those, get my move tool, hold down Alt so that I can move that set over, and looks like that set can go maybe on the inside of this D. And we'll select a single one at a time, Control T, transform that, enter, that looks good. And literally you can take these same two and just keep changing them as far as transforming the size of them. Oops, I'm on this, Control T, I can change those two together, hit enter, and just bring it up in there. So this part can be a little bit mundane, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and create the rest of my drips, and maybe you pause the video and play with your drips as well. You would have to find a brush pack that had these type of drips in it. I'm not certain where I got these from, but I'm sure if you look up Photoshop brush drip, you'll find you some. At the very least, you can always go find a vector drip and use that as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause here and I'll be back.